He's got that straight line to...
Touchdown Jesus.
Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe, like, before he goes in sport mode, he's 6'3", 223.
He has like a 7-foot-long broadsword that he carries on his back to walk his dog.
Happy Friday, Falcons fans. Welcome back to the Friday Five. I am your host, Will McFadden. I'm joined by Tori, McElhaney, and Terrin Waack, and we are here to break down the 5 biggest things that you need to know before this weekend's matchup between the Atlanta Falcons and the Miami Dolphins. Falcons need to bounce back coming off of a loss. They return back at home. It's going to be a big game, and I'm excited to dig into that with you both. But before we get to that, let's say we start with our social question of the day.
Yeah. Okay. It's a good one, but for the Halloween spirit, it's who would survive the longest in a horror movie? And instead of like us saying between the 3 of us, like I thought it would be better if we did the players on the current team.
Oh, heck yeah.
Like, so, and do you want me to answer first, or Terrin, do you want to go first?
I can go first.
Okay, go first.
So I'm torn between 2. Do I say both, or do I have to
go
pick
ahead and
one?
go ahead and say
explain
both.
your reasoning, though.
Yeah.
Okay. David Onyemata
Okay.
That's good.
or
I like
Liam
that.
McCullough?
Okay.
One is way
Yeah,
better
those are
than the
2.
other. All right, I know the winner of those 2.
My thought process is David Onyemata kind of goes under the radar because he's just a quieter guy, but I know when he's on the field, he's an absolute menace.
Yeah.
I go with Liam for half of that reason, where it's like, you just go kind of under the radar unless you fully mess up. And it's like
zombies won't even want you.
The zombies won't even come near you.
Liam wouldn't even survive
Like,
an Onyemata lips. Like, he's not even beating David Onyemata, so I think
I'm
David's
going
the
with
pick.
the, like, evading the zombies technique.
Who you got, Tori?
So I was thinking, I considered everyone a part of the organization as being a part of the team. So they're not technically on the 53-man roster right now. They're on injured reserve. But Caleb McGarry would absolutely
that's
be
a
the
good
one to
one.
survive in a horror film. He has all of these... I mean, the man tracked a bear for like 2 years.
Yeah.
His groomsmen had swords.
Yeah, he has like a 7-foot-long broadsword that he carries on his back to walk his dog. Like,
He's the top draft pick without question.
absolutely. Honestly, and can you imagine like because in horror films, it's kind of like, you know, they're not these huge beings. I watched The Shining last night, and it's just like a man. It's
a casual
it is Jack
Wednesday
Nicholson.
movie.
But,
Right,
like, it's
yeah.
not.
Yeah, but like
But
him
if you
up
were going
against Caleb
against
McGarry.
Michael Meyer, like that's a different story.
Fair. It depends on
Jason is different than Jack Nicholson. I agree. That is a great point.
Edward Scissorhands is different. I think that was like where my brain went, is like how many actual like horror villains are bigger than Caleb McGarry.
Yeah, no, I think those are definitely both the best like bruiser kind of berserker types. David Onyemata and Caleb McGarry would win in
Not
a brawl.
Liam McCullough?
I love you, Liam, but we're gonna stick with those 2. I do think Charlie Warner, sneaky add to that
True,
list, would
yeah,
be good.
that's a good one.
But I'm gonna go in a different. I'll go in the stealth direction, which you were getting at with Liam. Is I think Darnell would actually be Darnell Mooney would be kind of like
Can't catch
blend
him.
into the shadows and then just be like, nobody even knows where I am, and they would pop out at the end and be like, all right, I win.
That's true.
I
You
picture
know?
him like Flash.
Dejan is too nice though. He's probably sacrificing himself.
For sure.
That's- yeah.
Something's
He's trying to
happening.
cure
and-
the zombies, not
Yeah.
delete them.
All right, well, that was great. If you want to see who the players actually picked themselves, you can go check it out on the Falcons TikTok feed. And if you like the segment, we've got plenty more where that came from every day throughout the week. So, yeah, I love their social questions of the day. But enough messing around. Okay,
yeah,
this
we're
is
serious.
back to business for
Yeah.
the Atlanta Falcons this week. So, for that reason, after a loss, I feel like you often look inward. A lot of our topics today are going to deal with the Atlanta Falcons, and Terrin, I've been thinking about kind of this show as a great like back half of where we left off last week, because the Falcons were going west with a chance to kind of correct something they were unable to do earlier in the season, right? Coming off of Minnesota, you go to Carolina, things don't go the way you wanted. And you identified that like right off the jump after the Buffalo game. You're like, they have a chance to kind of do something here. They didn't quite do it, did they?
No, they just didn't do it. They lost to the 49ers. And I just think about all the answers players and coaches alike gave in the lead up to the 49ers game, where it's like, we learned our lesson. Jesse Bates straight up said that's a lesson that can't be taught twice. But here we are entering week 8 after a loss that came after a massive win, where it's like, come on. It's one of those things where you talk the talk, can you walk the walk? Like, you're saying all the right things, but we need to see it come to fruition where you're stacking wins and showing that you can maintain consistency and that winning culture and that winning nature. And it doesn't have to be a big blowout win week after week. It can be, like Raheem Morris said, winning ugly.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the difference here in talking about where the Falcons are right now versus maybe some other teams that we're talking about being playoff contenders either last year or this year. And I think you made a good point. Like, good teams stack wins, but they also win the games that they don't necessarily play their best in. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that was something that, even to Raheem's point, I think he was asked about it on Wednesday, and he said, like, good teams win ugly games. Yep. And that's kind of where the Falcons need to get to, because right now, if you look at the games that they've won, which was Minnesota when they played out of their minds defensively. Mm-hmm. You look at the Buffalo Bills game, the Washington Commanders games, like there were moments in time where they were playing at their absolute best and their kind of peak of who they should be and who they want to be and who their identity is. That's really, if it takes you, it's gonna take your best to like win double-digit games every single year in this league. We know that, but you're not always going to be at your best every single week. You're going to come up against a defense that takes Bijan Robinson away. Yep. So it's when that happens, the good teams, the ones that end up pushing to a postseason, are the ones that, when things don't look pretty, they still find a way to win games. And I think, honestly, the Bucs have been a very, almost like a good example of that, like where they aren't blowing people out of the water. They are having mistakes here and there, but when it all is said and done, outside of this Detroit loss that they just had, which, give credit to Detroit. Detroit's a good team. Mm-hmm. But the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are in the realm of like making plays enough to win games.
Absolutely. And the reason that's important, winning ugly, is because that's what playoff football is, right? And when you look at the Chiefs last year, the Eagles this year, the Bucs are a great example as well. Like, the ability to just win, regardless, in any form and fashion, any way you can, that is important. And good teams, when you're playing a good team and you're a good team, they're going to take away what you like to do. And it just kind of felt like without Bijan Robinson cooking at the level that he usually does, the Falcons, didn't have the best second gear that they can turn to. And so there's a lot to learn from that game because they do aspire to be a playoff team. And this was a great test. But Tori, if we're talking kind of playoff football, is there in that game one clear area that the Falcons need to get cleaned up if you do reach the postseason and you do have aspirations to kind of go on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all has to stem from offensive issues in the red zone, and not even offensive issues in the red zone. I think it's just scoring offense in general. Yeah, like not putting the ball in the end zone, like relying on kicks and relying on, yes, you can move the ball usually 20-yard line to 20-yard line, but you can't have these moments like what we saw in the second quarter of the Falcons game against the 49ers where they put together a 19-play drive that eats up 10 minutes of clock. Yeah. And then you don't score. I know we talked about that kind of in the post-game podcast on Final Whistle. And I honestly think like that's, if there's one thing that if this thing gets fixed, we're talking about this team in a different way, it's that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the numbers and it's pretty stark, right? They're 7th in 3-and-out rate, which means they have the 7th lowest rate of 3-and-out. So they're not going 3-and-out. They have the 7th average drive distance, just over 34 yards. So when they get the ball, they're able to get that first down. They're able to kind of move it across midfield more often than not. However, they're 24th in drive score rate. They're 26th in points per drive, and they're 29th in the red zone. So those are clear issues that you do have to figure out in a league that is centered around scoring points. Terrin, what if the players and coaches you've talked to this week said about how they're going to go about doing that?
It's something they came to terms with or acknowledged immediately post game. Talking to Darnell Mooney with the 19-play drive specifically, he said, "You always want to score, especially when you have such a long drive. It feels so amazing just to be able to do whatever you want to do, but they're not scoring. So it feels good until it doesn't." And he did say it feels nostalgic or reminiscent of last year when this was a similar issue, or even earlier this year. And then head coach Raheem Morris did say in his press conference too, we'll get back to it. Like, they weren't scoring well at the beginning of the season. They had the bye, figured it out, and then scored really well. And I get that, and I agree, but we're only 2 games removed from the bye, right? That are you going to have to keep going up and down, fix and fix?
Right.
So I'm curious how that's going to go. But a big thing, like, from everyone this week, Michael Penix Jr., Zach Robinson, Raheem Morris, others in the locker room, it's just we have to execute better. It comes down to that. And that's probably, I mean, Michael did admit that's frustrating because it sounds so simple, and yet it's not. And he did say, like, they are working on that every single day, and when they figure it out, it'll be a beautiful thing to watch.
Yeah, I understand kind of that execution piece feeling a little frustrating to the fan base because it is ultimately the result is what matters because it's all they can see. You know, they're not out here seeing practice and seeing the work put in to try to correct. You just go out there and you kind of see what the end result is, and when the result is what it has been, that's where you're like, how do you get it fixed? Is execution just saying execution enough? But it does kind of come down to that at the end of the day. And
I will say, like, from my point of view, I'm like, okay, how does the execution just change in the red zone? Like, you're doing the same thing at the midway field or middle of the field. And so for another perspective, I did ask Zach Harrison, like, okay, on the flip side, do you amp up your energy or like it's something completely different in the red zone that like offenses just get stopped? And he said, yeah, that's when you have to dig deep, bow up, and not let the teams get in the end zone. So it goes both ways. It's not just the offense is falling apart all of a sudden when they cross the 20-yard line. Like, oh, no, like, we hate this area. It's the defense is manning up big time, too. So it goes both ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you say that because that was exactly what I wrote was about, like, when the field shrinks, when you take away the explosive plays, when you're inside the 20, it turns the pressure up in multiple different ways, and one of which is what the defense is trying to do. But I think something that was evident and this is kind of a theme of like where we need to see Michael Penix's growth as a quarterback, as a young quarterback, is when that pressure does get dialed up, whether it's in the red zone or anywhere else on the field, like that's when you need him at his best. And so far through this first part of this season, you've needed a bit more from Michael Penix when he's under pressure and under duress. I know the stat was kind of thrown out everywhere that he did not complete a single one of his 9 passes under pressure this past Sunday. That's not new. That's not a new thing. Against the Commanders, he had been pressured on 34.3 of his dropbacks. Which is just below league average, but has struggled even in those moments despite being pressured less. Versus Tampa Bay, he was pressured on 20 of his 46 dropbacks, 43.5%, took a sack. Like, there is pressure that is mounting with Michael Penix, and he's uncomfortable in that pressure that it's become a glaring issue. And I even go back to this game, and it was kind of the microcosm of those pressure moments because I looked it up and I was watching film, and for the Falcons got inside the 30-yard line 3 times. So not even red zone, let's just say inside the 30-yard line 3 times. On 2 of the 3, Michael Penix was under pressure, and that pressure thwarted a scoring opportunity. So he was sacked on 3rd down. Even though I do think that he had some receivers open, I think if you were to go back and look at it, he would say, yeah, I had Drake, yeah, I had Darnell, held onto the ball for too long. And then, of course, we know the intentional grounding that really did take points off the board because you were in field goal position. And that is, again, that's like a rookie mistake. You know, like that's a young guy not realizing where the tackle box is and thinking he's out of it and maybe not being, like, people make mistakes. And I think, like, I'm pointing all of this out not to be like, oh, Michael Penix isn't the answer. No, like, that's not what I'm saying at all.
I think that's a correctable area.
Right. Yeah. What I'm saying is that this is a very obvious, like, fix to me. Yep. Like, this is very much something that it's like, hey, when you feel the pressure, when you're under pressure, whether you're inside the 20 or not, like, we need a bit more from you. We need you to set your feet. We need you to really get through all your progressions. We need you to, like, sometimes just let the ball go. Yeah. And so I think, like, that's where I'm coming from by pulling all this stuff up.
Zach Robinson even said, well, now that lesson's learned. Like, Michael's not going to make the same mistake again. Like, sometimes you have to learn those lessons. Actually, you do have to learn those lessons at some point in your career, and lesson learned. Well, and I do think Zach Robinson plays a role in helping Michael Penix as well. You know, when pressure is involved, it can be as simple as, all right, what are our hot route options? What are the alerts? Is it not being identified? Like, there are more ways to correct that than just
the quarterback playing better, which is why I'm optimistic that it can get corrected. But when we go back to kind of the red zone and just the offense overall and scoring points, they're going to have to figure out a way to do that without one of the wide receivers that came into the season with. Terrin, you want to explain what kind of went down this week?
The Falcons released wide receiver Ray McLeod III on Tuesday. Falcons head coach Raheem Morris said on Wednesday it was purely performance-based. This is not a disciplinary thing whatsoever. He goes, I've seen it all. Like, I'm sure there's rumors out there on the internet, but I haven't seen them. So when it comes to that decision, he played in 21 of a possible 23 games since he arrived in Atlanta last offseason. That's a lot. He started 14 of them. He was the third starting wide receiver on the depth chart. That is a big void you now have to fill. And you kind of got to see the Falcons wide receiver depth already tested this season when Darnell Mooney was injured. He missed week 1, and then he missed week Bills, whatever week that was, week Bills.
Week
6 week Bills. And in those
Bills.
moments, Casey Washington started. What I was curious to see when the depth chart came out was it wasn't Casey who took Ray McLeod's spot, though. It was David Sills. So
I think that honestly, like, my thought in that is that the Falcons are continuing to lean into their run game and continuing to lean into what they have in Bijan Robinson, what they have with kind of these other pieces.
What's working,
what they're relying on. And I think the reason we're seeing, and this is just speculation, I haven't like talked to anybody about this, but like I think the reason you saw someone like a David Sills be inserted into that spot on the depth chart, whether or not it's like how they run things out or not, I think to me is an indicator that the Falcons are continuing to really, really value what they do in run blocking, really, really putting the emphasis on that to their receivers and also to kind of just the team as a whole to be like, hey, because I do think David Sills does some good things in run blocking. And I think, like, not to take anything away from his receiving skills, but he's not the same entity of a receiver as Ray McLeod. So it's not we talked a lot about like clones that Raheem Morris is constantly trying to find like clones for guys. David Sills and Ray McLeod, that's not a clone situation.
And Casey Washington have been the guy, like when they need the receiver in the game, that's kind of who's been in the game. When they need that extra run blocking, it's been more David Sills or Kadero Hodge or who have you. Yeah.
So I think like the point that I am trying to make in all of this is, and I don't want to be disparaging when I ask this question, but it is a question that I have. Like, as I'm looking at what the wide receiver room was this year and going into this year, do you really truly miss Ray McLeod? Like, when you have Drake London, when you have Kyle Pitts, when you have Bijan Robinson, when you now have Darnell Mooney back, I think that, like, look, this is just personally how I felt, is like when you didn't have Darnell Mooney throughout training camp, when you didn't have Darnell Mooney the first couple weeks of the season, when you didn't have him the last like couple weeks, like, I truly didn't. I felt
his absence.
I felt his absence. I felt that he needed to be out there, and if he was out there, it would move the needle. I don't know if I necessarily felt the same way personally from where I was with Ray McLeod not having been there the last 2 weeks. I think you do miss kind of some of that top end speed. 100%. We saw, heck, Kirk Cousins and Ray McLeod were this third down duo of, you know, I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but I imagine that Ray McLeod was Kirk Cousins' top target on third down. I guarantee you, like, just thinking about it, like, he had so many third down receptions that were so big for Kirk Cousins, but I don't know if that was the same relationship that he had with Michael Penix. I'm not sure if I even like felt that throughout training camp, like outside of a couple plays here and there. But I feel that if we're comparing apples to oranges a little bit, like I felt the absence of Darnell Mooney, but not necessarily the same as like Ray McLeod.
No, I think that's totally fair because I do think Darnell has a bigger role and is, frankly, a little bit of a better, maybe all-around receiver than Ray. So it's hard probably to divorce who was absent when because they both have been kind of missing. I think they've just missed, maybe not Ray from this year because, you know, like the Carolina game wasn't what we saw from him last year. But they missed that guy from last year. They missed that third down option, particularly on screens. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but it feels like the last couple of weeks we've gotten Kyle Pitts on a lot of these like wide receiver screens out wide.
Yep.
Have to imagine that would be somebody like Ray if he were in the lineup. So it's more just those little moments where you could use somebody with that level of speed, with maybe that like short area burst in these underneath routes. So, his impact, some will probably miss it, maybe more than others. I think everybody's going to miss Divine Deablo. He's not going to be in the lineup this weekend. Fractured his forearm, we learned after the 49ers game. Terrin, what's kind of the latest on all that?
I mean, he's week to week, but Raheem Morris said it is very possible that Divine Deablo can end up on injured reserve. And if that is the case, that's a massive loss to this Falcons defense. I mean, they call him an avatar for a reason. He is such a presence in the middle of the field. I mean,
I keep thinking of that Bills game when he was like no-looked, batted the ball down. That's one of the coolest plays I've ever seen a defender make.
I mean, it says he's 6'3", 223 pounds online, and I'm like, no, he's much bigger.
He's
7'7" and 500 pounds.
Yeah.
Like he just maybe like before he goes in sport mode, he's 6'3", 223. Like, but when he's in sport mode, no, everything just extends.
He becomes a transformer.
But yeah, he at this point in the season is at 24 tackles, 4 pass breakups, a fumble recovery, and half a sack. A little bit of everything. And without him, that's a big void to fill. And the person who had to fill it in San Francisco was J.D. Bertrand, who had only taken 1 defensive snap prior to that moment. He did make 10 tackles, which tied Jesse Bates and Tatum Bethune for most, and Tatum was filling in for Fred Warner, so both of them were filling in massive shoes. And yeah, it's funny because like afterward, JD said it's a God whisper. He just had this feeling something was going to happen, so he prepared to play defensively, not just his normal special teams role. He said he just had this inkling
that Notre Dame
he was
pipeline
going
working
to
out.
have.
He's got that straight line to
Touchdown Jesus.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then Caden Ellis afterward did say he did great. Like J.D. Bertrand played great. He's very intellectual, very physical. We'll be good with him.
Yeah.
But you have to wonder if they're gonna stick with JD only.
Yeah, Tori, what do you think the Falcons are going to do there?
Yeah, so this was like the main question that I got in the mailbag this week is like, how do you replicate, how do you account for Divine Deablo's absence? Because yeah, I mean, it's a fracture in the forearm. Like it's going to probably be at least a few weeks. Like, and I think early you could maybe get him back in maybe a month, like according to what the fracture even is. So there's a lot of speculation where it's like, this is a big loss for this defense. It's a big loss right now, regardless if he gets put on IR or not. So how do they approach filling the role? And I kind of put it out there that it has to be like a by committee approach. Like it has to be. And I threw out Josh Woods because I think Josh Woods did some good things in the preseason. He's somebody that Jeff Ulbrich really, really likes from a standpoint of like the heart that he plays with and how hard he goes. And I think like he's somebody that Jeff Ulbrich has really grown to appreciate. But I also made mention of someone like a DeMarco Helms.
Yep.
You know, I think that you could get a 3 safety look in there.
We
have
haven't seen a
DeMarco
ton of him yet this season.
Right. If you need more of a thumper, like we know that DeMarco Helms like can do that.
Bam.
Yeah, he's like put him closer to the line of scrimmage. Maybe he can do some things like in a pseudo hybrid linebacker safety role. Also, D'Angelo Malone has been cross training at a traditional edge rusher, but also inside linebacker. So and then let's be real, Jalen Walker is still on this team. And no one has said his name because one, he's working through the groin injury that's kind of lingered for him over the course of training camp and then the first part of the season, and he missed last week for it. But this is a guy who played traditional inside linebacker for Kirby Smart at the University of Georgia. Like,
that was all in one breath.
I was like, you're rushing to get that out.
Don't forget about him. Like, I know that Jeff Ulbrich and Raheem Morris has said over and over again, we want him to master being an edge rusher. Like, great. But you do not have...
Not that time.
You do not have Divine Deablo anymore, and it's not going to be a one-for-one replication because of who Divine Deablo was and his coverage ability, his ability to rush the passer, how big he is, how strong he is, how fast he is. Like, he turned into this entity for this defense that was a havoc causer.
Yep.
You do not have a one-for-one replication of that, so you're going to have to do it by committee by a bunch of different people, and that's exactly what Jeff Ulbrich said when he talked to media on Wednesday, that is absolutely probably going to be the plan. Like, yes, J.D. Bertrand is going to get extended reps, but it's not just going to be on J.D. alone to step in for Divine Deablo.
Yeah, we'll see exactly kind of what that plan is on Sunday, 1 o'clock, when they take the field against the Miami Dolphins. And let's wrap up today's show kind of talking a little bit about the Miami Dolphins in this next game ahead, right? Falcons are 3-3 going into it. They need to, I think, rebound and look good doing it, right? We've talked a lot about in recent weeks what good teams do. They don't lose back-to-back games. They win and stack wins, right? I think good teams, I'm going to add another one here, is they beat the teams that you're supposed to beat. This is a reeling Miami Dolphins team. Like there are a lot of favorable matchups in this game, and Tori, maybe we'll start here with you. Is like when you look at the Miami Dolphins, how do you see a path to victory for Atlanta here?
Yeah, I think a lot of people would look at the Miami Dolphins and look at their offense and all of the things that is kind of going wrong for them offensively right now. But something that I found really interesting, this is on Next Gen Stats, is I do think that the Falcons can get back on track running the ball a bit against this Miami defense. Particularly because the Falcons have run a lot out of 12 personnel, and the Miami Dolphins kind of struggle to play against 12 personnel. And I say this because the Falcons have used 12 personnel on 45.9% of their offensive snaps this season. That's the highest rate in the NFL. We know that to be the case. The Falcons love doing it. They have to. They have Kyle Pitts and Charlie Warner and Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, so it makes sense. But what's interesting is the Dolphins have allowed 6.3 yards per play when facing 12 personnel this season. That's the sixth most in the league. So if you're just going by the numbers and reading the tea leaves and all the things, like the Falcons are running out of 12 personnel frequently, often, almost all the time, like almost 50% of the time. And the Miami Dolphins are giving up over 6 yards per play going against 12 personnel. I think that's a small part of this matchup that maybe not a lot of people are talking about, but maybe you should pay attention to.
So, Terrin, you think this is another big Bijan game on deck?
I don't know what to think with this team half the time anymore. But you would love to see what Bijan did against the Bills, against the Dolphins. That's what I'll say. And going off of like what Tori was saying with those numbers, love that you had those.
Thanks.
Just run game overall. The Dolphins are last in the league when it comes to defending the run. The Falcons are top 10, I think 7th, if I'm correct.
As a rushing offense?
Yeah, I think they're 7th.
I think so.
Yep. I think 7th in total, 7th in rushing.
Yes. And by blanking on that stat, I blanked where I was going. But regardless, yes. Bijan, they need to feed Bijan Robinson, and they need to I think it would give them the confidence back after the run game was shut down in San Francisco. You're at home too. So the Dolphins are 1-6, and they're 0-4 on the road. Let's make that 0-5 because the Dolphins' only win is against the 0-7 Jets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then when you paint it like that,
the numbers are telling the story here. Thank you. Like this is, some would say, I don't want to say easy win, but
it's a game you should win.
It's a game you should win.
It's absolutely a game you should win. And
is it a must win?
Again, it's a game, if you're a playoff team, you should win. And I think that's where a lot of people were looking at San Francisco as a loss that, oh my God, how can the Falcons lose that game? They can lose that game because I think San Francisco is a playoff team too. Like that is a good on good matchup, and it's excusable to lose that game. This is a different story, in my opinion. You're back at home. You're against a team really on the ropes. The matchups favor you in a lot of areas. Your strength is their weakness. Go out and handle your business. Michael Penix Jr., I really want to see him play efficient football. I want him to see, he doesn't have to throw it a ton, I think, in this one. When you do, make it count. And then defensively, I was digging into blitz rates and pressure rates and things because that's just been the part of Atlanta's defense that's fascinated me the most. I think it's worth remembering here that Tua Tagovailoa gets the ball out faster than pretty much anybody.
He's very good against pressure.
Yeah, the Dolphins have the third lowest time to throw in the league behind Kansas City and Pittsburgh. So Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers, right? They have been blitzed, I believe, the fifth lowest rate. And it's not just like, it's a little bit different than Buffalo, which had this great offensive line, so it made sense why teams weren't necessarily going to try to do that. They haven't needed to against Miami, though.
Right.
Like, even though they're getting blitzed at a low rate, they're giving up kind of middle of the league pressure numbers and sack numbers. So I think Jeff Ulbrich wants to get his front four going and generate pressure that way. Maybe you pull Jalen Walker back. Maybe you don't need him this week. Maybe you don't need Caden Ellis in that pass rush because I think they can get pressure with 4. So that's going to be kind of the other side of the ball matchup that I am looking at. But I think that'll do it for kind of today's Friday 5. Is there anything else? Want to open the floor up to you two before we get out of here that you want to discuss?
No, I'm good on not embarrassing myself this week.
Yeah,
No falling down the stairs?
falling
Did you-
up.
you
Yeah.
No
Okay.
bruises.
Yay, good.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, we're good. Everything's good.
All right, well, cool. Thank you guys so much for listening. A reminder, please check out the pregame show this Sunday. It is noon on the Falcons YouTube channel. We'll be live from Mercedes-Benz Stadium. You can check Derek Rackley and Taylor Vismore for that. And then you can find us after the game, Monday morning, Falcons Final Whistle. Tori and I will be breaking down all of the action. But until then, everybody, have a great weekend, and we will see you next time.